Welcome back to Shift Happens. I'm Blair Hicken, and this is the show where we talk to leaders about how their businesses are evolving through technology, data, and new ways of operating. Today, I'm joined by Tom Fencl, CFO of Quantilope, and Quantilope is focused on helping organizations make faster, more informed decisions using real-time consumer insights powered by AI and automation. Tom brings a unique perspective from finance, technology, scaling a SaaS business. So I'm really looking forward to digging into how decision making is changing organizations and what Tom has been seeing out there in the marketplace. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Blair. Great to be with you.
Yeah. Can you give us a little bit of background on what led you into your current role and, what exactly is Quantilope and what you do with clients?
Happy to. I've been doing finance for a better part of last 3 decades. Uh, don't have to cover all of that. The last decade, I've been CFO for a couple different tech startups and scale ups and different, slightly different sectors. And with Quantilope, I've been with for the last 2 years. Quantilope, as you cited in your introduction, is providing a tech solution. It's in fact we're a technology leader recognized by the Green Book for the last 2 years in the area of consumer insights, also known previously as market research. So happy to talk about what we do there and how we help companies use technology.
Great. So, what kind of companies are typically you working with or helping that you see would get a benefit from this type of technology?
As some folks probably, when they hear market research, they probably think of consumer products and packaged consumer goods, and obviously those are very much many of our customers fall into the category. But beyond that space, we serve companies in financial industry, in telecom and services, pretty much anyone who has direct contact with consumers and who has branded product or branded service, because really kind of understanding how consumers make their decisions when they choose which product to buy or which service to use, we can help.
And do you find that the companies that are coming to you have been using a service, or is this a gap in the market that you've identified and you're filling, or is a new?
Great question, and it's an evolving space. So if you think back a couple decades, this has traditionally been industry dominated by agencies. So very much a service heavy, fairly long lead times. Back in the day, it was sort of a clipboard and a pencil type question that obviously evolved in the 80s and 90s to phone interviews, eventually computer assisted phone interviews. But still, that's the sort of gathering of the data. But on the in terms of processing, what do you do and how you actually transform the data into insights that are helpful to decision makers. That's been very much a labor intensive work. And let's understand why labor intensive. This is agencies are staffed by PhD level scientists. Fairly sophisticated methods that we're talking about, and you can't just like kind of do a stats one-on-one course in college and start doing that. So this has been how the industry have evolved over the past several decades. About 15 years ago or so, you saw emergence of the sort of first do-it-yourself tech solutions, which largely automated the data collection piece. So those were your sort of survey monkeys of the world. That helped in speeding up the process, particularly, as I said, on the data collection. Didn't really address the kind of data processing and generation of insights. And either you couldn't use it or you were only using it for very rudimentary kind of type questions. So what we've done, we've been around for about 10 years now. We have automated those highly sophisticated methods that I said previously would be run by PhDs with specialized software. So we automated that in the platform, and our platform is built on being able to deliver those insights and analyze the data in the very sort of high quality, agency quality.
Right. And so, what are you seeing now in terms of how companies are making decisions or the types of research that they're doing, in the last 24 months versus maybe 3 years ago or things like that? How are businesses evolving on how to consume the amount of data that people are gathering?
So, in terms of what people are researching, that is not changing that much. Ultimately, anyone who is sort of a brand manager or marketing director responsible for a brand or branded product still has sort of a similar scope of questions. We broadly distinguish them in two ways. One's something which we call sort of the space of tracking, where you ask the same question over and over, and you basically follow the kind of trend of how things are
Okay.
changing. This could be something as simple as just what consumer have preference for different brands in terms of what they prefer. And then there are certain what we call advanced insights. So those are questions that you would only ask once because at that point you want to test, let's say, packaging of a new product that only you ever do once, because then the next time you do it, you will have a different packaging, and so you have to run a different test. So that scope, if you will, that hasn't evolved as much. What's evolving, and we've certainly been beneficiary of that trend, is that users or our customers are expecting results faster without sacrificing quality.
Right.
And that's where our sort of value proposition comes in, because we can, as I said, deliver the sort of agency level quality much faster than before. Maybe one thing that's important to explain is that we operate in the platform that we provide can be used by customers in two different ways. Some customers, or for some use cases, they use it themselves. Other customers actually help them to get the insights in our platform in form of professional services. But the part about what we see is more and more customers are getting comfortable, and this is the change in the shift, as you would say, in the environment. People are realizing that platforms like ours exist, and that you can make better and faster decision by using automated platform like ours.
It's great. So are you finding that you need to educate people in the offer that you have, or is it or are a lot of your clients reaching out, or opportunities reaching out, understanding the need for data analysis, but looking for a faster turnaround?
Yes. So it's a combination. Obviously, there is some education, particularly in explaining how you can do it.
Right.
If it's the first time around and you've been told for the past 20 years that only an agency which costs easily 3, 4, 5 times more than what we charge can deliver that, then maybe you have some hesitancy. So we do need to kind of explain that. But what helps us is the general kind of atmosphere in the business sector, particularly here in the US. We've started in Europe, and only about 4 or 5 years ago we came here to the US, and we're growing even faster. So we, as a company, we grow about 25% annually. In the US, we grow between 40 and 50% a year. And that is because companies here are under perhaps more pressure, but also more willing to try new technologies and then obviously gain the benefits of the technology. So.
Well, that kind of leads me into, another question I wanted to get your feedback on. Do you feel it's more of a leadership mind shift, or it's a technology shift, or do you think it's a combination of the two to bring people down this path?
Right. As you suggested, I think the right answer is a combination of the two, because obviously as the technology gets better and evolves, then it's easier to use, and it's easier to be confident that the results you're getting are relevant and useful, right? So on one hand, the fact that technology is getting better is important and necessary. On the other hand, yes, it is also about mind shift, and leadership is important here. The fact that we've been able to grow as fast as we have, we've seen that people do change their minds, and some of our customers, when they talk, when they give testimonies on why they choosing Quantilope, is precisely because they say, I didn't know, but now I know that I can do it faster and cheaper and have the same quality that I need. And the speed is important here, because the speed is not just an abstract concept. Maybe let's sort of double down on that one a little bit. Previously, when you have an agency do a study for you, two things happen. One, you get the results easily 6 weeks after the numbers have been collected. That means that by the time you're looking at the results, they're already kind of slightly outdated.
Right.
Maybe not in the old world where things were moving slower, but today there's that. And also, very rarely anything we do, any kind of business decision making, is a sort of a linear script where I can say,
Yeah.
today I have this question, then give me the answer, and then we go from there. I have a question, you give me an answer, I'll think about it, and I'll ask another question, and we want to iterate. And this concept of iteration is extremely difficult. When every question you have to send it out to an external agency, get PDF or a PowerPoint presentation, hard coded, and then have a question. So, okay, 2-3 weeks later, we'll give you an answer to that. Where something like what our platform is doing is that as a user, if let's say you're the marketing director who is running or wants to look at the results, you can start looking at the results as they are coming in, even during the part of the collection. You can sort of say, no, this is going the wrong direction. I want it to change a little bit, and we can still do it. Then you get your results, and you can start slicing and dicing the results and the data. Well, what if instead of general population, I look at what the results look in just like, let's say, for a certain age group or a certain demographic? You can literally do it as we speak on the platform, which of course, in the kind of an old format, that would require going back and sort of doing more work with professional services outside. So that speed is not just, as I said, abstract concept. This is something that the business leaders, once they get a taste,
Yeah.
they like it a lot.
Well, it's interesting how, the speed of business in and of itself and the types of questions and decisions that they're looking for just is continuing to grow. And even your comment around how in the US there seems to be even more, I guess, drive for that real time or faster response time. And so they're able to appreciate how your platform brings that forward for people.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah. So, as these initiatives, are rolled out, what typically has been the breakdown between the data-driven decisions, and how businesses move it forward, and how is your platform helping to enable this?
So maybe sort of explain a little bit of what the impact
Yeah.
we have on the organizations. The sort of need or the desire of marketing leaders to get more questions answered is effectively limitless. So when we say we save cost, what we're really telling them and what our customers are sort of taking advantage of is not to necessarily cut budget, although in some cases, if they are constrained, that might be a motivation for use of someone like ours. But more often than not, it's not cutting the budget. It's just saying, okay, I'll run more studies, right? Okay. So it's ability to ask more questions, therefore have better sort of plasticity, better map, so to speak, right? This is ultimately about making business decisions. So we provide them with a more real-time but a more detailed map, really, for making decisions at a cost that they can fit into their budgets. Which, by the way, there's another thing we didn't talk about is what is this price doing for sort of the structure of who can use this. And when people think of market research, they often think about the very large consumer brands. Everyone knows that I'm not allowed to talk about it anyway. But yes, there are customers, and they have very large budgets. We're obviously not eating into all of that. But there are other smaller companies that have also need for market research insights. And historically, oftentimes they couldn't afford to hire a big agency. So what they would do, they would make a decision based on gut feel. And this is not necessarily something that's horrible. Obviously, these are companies or brands ran by people with experience, so their gut feel is probably better than yours or mine on the subject. But it's a very far cry from data-driven decision making. And so when they hear that they can get the same kind of a quality insight at a fraction of the cost, they say, okay, maybe I'll do gut feel. I will actually do data-driven decision making. And so a lot of our customers are, in fact, sort of emerging brands, companies that don't have huge budgets, but they grow fast, and they obviously need to understand the consumers that they serve. That's another segment that we're successfully penetrating.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting play on that. Bringing this type of technology and data analysis into different spectrum of clients, and exposing them to what's possible, and then, as you've described, being flexible enough that you can iterate, right, with the speed with which you can ask the questions and get the results. They can iterate on where the market's going, what the feedback is. Yeah. So, from the gap between having volumes of data and waiting to being able to use it, is that how do people interpret the feedback that your platform is giving them?
That's a great question. There is uh, there's a couple sort of layers, if you will, right? There is the layer, and when people talk about data, that means different things to different people, right? For us, the data is broken down into answers to questions that in of themselves typically don't mean much. They need to be fed into a model, and they need to be interpreted. And historically up to pretty much now, that required not only high level of sophistication on our end as the provider, but also on the end of the customer. So a lot of these companies that are our customers employ people who are themselves former researchers. They're PhDs. They're people who can digest a very sophisticated output. Now that means that the insights are sort of inside the organization, our customer organization. There's kind of a two-tier kind of usage of that, right? You have the experts inside
Yeah.
that understand 100%, and then there's the rest of the company that still needs to filter it out. So what we've been working on, and we haven't talked about AI yet. Now is the time to talk about AI.
Yeah.
What we've been doing is that we've integrated something which we call Quinn. It's our name for sort of the AI researcher, if you will.
Okay.
So remember what we sit on and what our customers have inside the platform is a lot of data, but it's not just sort of unstructured data, but it's data that's processed with, as I said, sort of very disciplined way in those statistical models. And the AI researcher Quinn knows all these rules. So it's not going to just give you a random OpenAI type, ChatGPT answer that it made up, but it's going to query the data that you have as a customer, all the insights, but help you interpret them. And when I say help you, that could be as simple as, let's say you want to output by showing a chart and some sort of commentary. So Quinn can write it for you. But obviously, as you build more and more data inside the platform as a customer, those are your data that sits in our platform, then you can obviously interact more and more with Quinn, because you can ask like, well, last time I ran this study, what did it look like? And so we're basically, this is emerging thing, this is new thing, even for us. But what we see as a big opportunity is that not only we can democratize consumer insights, as we discussed, with like making it cheaper, therefore more companies can do it, but we can also democratize that by basically having this very purpose-specific AI that guides the users who are not necessarily themselves PhDs to be able to interact with the knowledge that sits there, that's there specific to their brand, to their company, but may have not been historically something that's accessible to someone like you or me who are not market researchers.
That, I think, is pretty spectacular. So being able to have the platform that allows for the quick analysis and gathering that information, but now sitting your AI Quinn on top of that data set that is continuously learning about that particular client's questions and feedback, and over time being able to provide that analysis without themselves having to have their own data scientists there. I think that is certainly going to help bring this type of service out of, specifically an enterprise level client, into a more mid-market, and ask those questions multiple times throughout a year to see how it changes. So
You summarized that strategy pretty well, so thank you.
yeah, I think that, it on the AI side, having volumes of data and trying to interpret that is a great place to put it. And so having your team build out this Quinn to sit on top of your platform to help bring that level of analysis to, clients, I think is phenomenal.
And I think that it's something we can sort of generalize outside of just our narrow use case. This obviously the frontline labs are trying to develop sort of God in the box. What we're doing, and I think that you can probably apply that in other spheres as well, is I don't know that customers necessarily need an agent. If I'm making marketing decisions or whatever other decision, I'm a lawyer, right? So
Right.
I don't necessarily need an AI that can also, by the way, while answering my question about a brand, crack some physics research, right?
Right.
So the question is, do you really need a system that can do all of these things at the same time? We believe rather not. We think that there is a space for an opportunity for a narrower but much deeper knowledge, which will give within that space where we operate truly amazing powers of insight to our customers.
Yeah, that's great. So, as you sort of look forward into 2026 and early 2026, what type of things do you feel either your clients or you in your role in finance of a, fast growing business? Where do you think people should be focused on to help move the business forward based on some of the new evolutions of AI automation that you've seen out there?
Absolutely. So I'll split the answer into sort of two categories. Narrowly in what we do in the space which we are talking about, we're looking into something called synthetic intelligence, which basically means that we want to sort of further build on top of the data that you refer to and basically create even easier to interact with interface for our customers. Now, more broadly on what's happening, I think that we touched on a lot of the ideas already during the earlier conversation, but speed really is not subsiding. If anything, things are moving faster, and I think that what we're looking at, both as we're developing these systems for our customers, but also internally, is how can we kind of build data and use them to drive faster decisions. And I think that that's a sort of a generalized trend where we just have to, like, the speed is not subsiding, as I said,
Right.
and the only way to be able to cope with that is by having kind of reliable quality insights fast.
Great. And from your role, within your own business, how are you seeing your own projects as you look forward and your own internal initiatives?
Absolutely, that's what we're doing also internally.
Okay.
We're developing with an outside vendor. We're developing a what you may think of as an FP&A platform, but it's basically something sitting on top of our NetSuite and our Salesforce systems that we've been using for a couple of years to really enable us to understand better our profitability by customer and by project. And it's building on the very much same philosophy, which is let's make sure that we understand where the data is coming from, that we have ensured the precision and sort of authenticity of the sort of data being shown, but let's also make sure that this is accessible to people throughout the organization. One of the things that as a finance leader I am a big proponent of is democratizing the financial information inside the
Right.
organization. Now, of course, you're not going to necessarily open the phone books to everyone in the company and let them access the bank accounts. But being, as speaking now specifically as a finance leader, being able to explain the business and what drives it, and being able to give timely, precise, sort of useful, usable information to people throughout the organization, I believe is important as a competitive advantage.
That's great. I've really enjoyed our discussion today, Tom. It's been quite a whirlwind from both understanding, what your platform brings to clients and how you're, being able to bring it down from the enterprise and apply AI, from an offering point of view, but even as you wrapped it up here at the end, how you're using that same approach of, looking at your NetSuite and Salesforce data and being able to provide analysis on that to your internal team members and providing them with the analytics and the decision-making power based on volumes of information. So I think how you've applied and you've described both those scenarios, I think is really wrapped up well. So I really appreciate your feedback and your thoughts today.
Well, thanks for having me, Blair.
Right.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and mine. Thank you.